Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto was the guardian of the future king. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Breathing heavily. In the darkness, a voice breathed hard as the darkness started to diminish, showing a young male in his late 20s. The young man stood 5 feet 10, lean, built like an Olympic swimmer. He has black shaggy hair and a few bangs that covered most of his handsome face. No homo. He has dark blue eyes along with a beard. He can be seen wearing an elegant royal raiment, an impeccable pinstripe suit with a scarf worn around his neck with gold jewelry accenting it, a majestic black and gold pauldron resting on his left shoulder, all accompanied by a cape strapped to his shoulder, with intricate gold accents behind it, and possessing a relaxed, high-backed collar flowing down his back and matching colored shoes. This young man was Noctis Lucis Kylum CXV, the chosen king of kings. Noctis breathed hard as he wiped away his sweat with his hand as he stared at a humanoid being with large horns who sat in his throne as fire surrounded him, including around the area. Noctis ran towards the being, followed by 4 other males. Once they were almost close to the monster, the 4 males attacked the being while Noctis was about to attack when the being raised his hand in a bored manner as he sent a massive wave of flames at them. Noctis fell on the floor as he tried to put out the fire that was on him. Gua! He screamed in pain as he rolled around, but then a young man the same age as him started to put out the fire. The young man stood the same height as Noctis as he was lean, built like him, but has blonde spike hair with a bang on the side of his face with a little goatee on his chin as he had a semi-handsome face, again no homo. As he had light blue eyes. The man wore a black long-sleeve Kingsglaive Royal Guard coat with royal designs that reached just above his knees, with a few buttons loose from his chest area but where the abs are isn't. Under his coat he wore what seemed like a dark gray sleeveless vest. He wears black baggy pants while the bottom of them was tucked inside long black boots that reached to his knees. Finally, on his hands were black fingerless gloves. This man was Prompto Argentum, Noctis' best friend and one of his guardians. NOCT. Breathing hard. Hang in there, buddy, he said as he put out the fire and stood up while Noctis tried to get up. Stay down, we'll keep him busy, he said as he ran up ahead. After he was gone, Noctis finally stood up but was still a little winded. Knocked. Over here, screamed another male who was in his mid-30s as he stood 5 feet 11 with brown eyes and hairstyle when he left Soul Society, and I will say it again, he was a handsome man, clean shaven with a scar where his eyes are but was covered with foggy glasses that covers his eyes. He is lean built as he wore the same garb Prompto wears. This was Ignis Scientia, one of Noctis' friends and guardian and strategist and cook of the team. Noctis looked at Ignis as he tried to walk towards him with little trouble. Quickly, before he strikes again, Noctis hurried, but then he was grabbed by a large man in his mid-30s, lean built like middleweight boxer who stood 6 feet 2 and again was handsome as he had 2 scars on his left side of his face along with a beard and as red eyes with long black hair that was tied into a ponytail with a small bang on his forehead. He also wore the same clothes Ignis and Prompto wore but right for his size. This was Gladiolus Amicitia, shield of Noctis and friend and guardian. Gladio lead Noctis to where Ignis and Prompto are as they hid behind cover as all 4 embraced each other for another attack. Just when they were about to meet another wave of flames, a large crystal dome appeared around them, protecting them from the flames. The others looked behind to see another male who was in his early 30s who stood 6 feet 0, lean build like a welterweight boxer as he has black spiky black hair with 2 long bangs on both sides of his face and some that almost covered his eyebrows, cloud strife hairstyle but longer. He wore the same uniform like Gladio, Prompto and Ignis, but only difference was he has a blue ribbon tied to his left bicep and a blue cloak on his right shoulder like Noctis has on his left shoulder. He again has a handsome face with dark blue eyes like Noctis and clean shaven. On his hand was a large katana with a black scabbard with a blue ribbon tied to the handle of the blade. No, this is not Yamato, though it has its abilities but not the DT, on his right hand while his left was raised glowing blue, showing he was the one who casted the spell. This man is Naruto Lucis Kylum CXIV, older brother of Noctis and the true heir to the throne, but rejected it and gave the throne to his brother so that he can be his guardian. Once the flames died down, Naruto released the dome and nodded to the others who nodded back as they all charged at the fire god as everything around them glowed white. Theme end. Before the fall. Once the light died down, it showed a beautiful city-like kingdom that was surrounded by massive walls along with a glowing radiant light shield that protected all around the city. In the center was a massive building with 2 towers on both sides. The scene changed, showing a large throne room. In the center was stairs that lead up to the large throne, and sitting in it was a man in his mid-40s with gray hair and green eyes with a gray beard. He wore a royal black dress suit with thin, white stripes, as well as a black cape. A gold brace appears on his right knee, and black shoes covered his feet. This man was King Regis Lucis Kylum Cxii of Insomnia and father of Naruto and Noctis. Standing before him was both his sons and Noctis' guardians. "The decreed hour has come," Regis said in a smooth, strong voice. He narrowed his eyes a little but softens it quickly. "Set forth, with my blessing, Prince Noctis," he said to his son, who was wearing versus 13 clothes while the others were wearing their clothes you start in the beginning of the game. While Naruto was wearing a white short-collared short-sleeved unbuttoned t-shirt with a black King of Lucis design on the back. Under the shirt he wore a black muscle shirt that hugged his well-built form. He also wore a black baggy cargo pants with a few pockets, and the bottom of them were tucked inside his black steel-toed boots that reached just half of his shin. And finally he wore a black belt that helped hold his pants in place with black fingerless gloves. Noctis bowed to his father. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said the last part as he looked to his father. Regis wore an emotionless face as he looked at his son in the eyes. "Take your leave, and go in the grace of the gods," he said calmly. Noctis stood straight as he looked his father. "Right," he said lowly as he turned, heading the main entrance to the throne room as he walked past by his companions and his older brother. Gladio, Ignis and Prompto looked at Noctis, then back to the king and bowed and followed him. During the exchange, Naruto was just standing with a stoic look to his face as he looked at his father. Once they left the room, Regis closed his eyes as he took a deep breath. Opening them, he looked at his eldest son, who also looked back at him. They both looked at each other in silence until Regis broke the silence. FFXV Ost Noctis theme, Naruto. Sighs my son. Though we never see eye to eye after the death of your mother that day. And the day you announced you didn't want to become king. And joined the Kingsglaive Royal Guards under Nyx. He was cut off when his son raised his hand. Your Majesty. The only reason why I didn't want to become king was because I failed to protect Mom and Noctis from that demon. I just stood there like a coward and watched Mom get struck down and watched her die before my eyes as Noctis was covered in her blood. And since that day I knew I and I failed Noctis. And that is why the best person that would rule the kingdom than I ever could would be Noctis. That is why I joined Kingsglaive, to protect him, as I will not fail him. Like I did to Mom," he said as he looked at his father with a small tears fell from his eyes while his father shed tears as well, as they both remembered their late mother and wife. Both wiped their eyes and looked at one another again. "Though as it may, I just wish I could go back and fix our bond as father and son, as I now finally understand your reason, though it took me 12 years to understand. But no matter what path you take, me and your mother will always be proud of you, my son," he said as Naruto bowed his father. "Thank you, father, I will not let you down." He stood straight and smiled at his father as Regis did the same. "Go forth and may the gods watch over you," he said as Naruto nodded his head at his father as he turned to leave the throne room. Once Naruto was gone, Regis shed a small tear as he looked at the right side of the open window of the throne. "This may be the last time we see each other, my son. Though I at least made my final peace with you. May the kings of Lucis watch over you and the others on your journey," he said as he stayed in the throne room alone. With Naruto. We find Naruto on the elevator as he waited to get to the bottom floor where Noctis and the others are waiting. After 30 seconds he finally reached down at the bottom. Once the elevator doors open, he was greeted by Nyx and Crow and some of others who were wearing their Kingsglaive uniform. Well, if it isn't the former prince himself," said a dirty blonde-haired male who stood in his early 30s looking at Naruto with a small smirk, waiting for a reaction from him, but that smirk went down when Naruto looked at him with an emotionless look, then back at Nyx. "Nyx, Crow. Good see you too," he said with a small smile on his face as Nyx smiled, nodding his head to his student while Crow blushed a little but smiled nonetheless. "Where are you going, Naruto?" asked Crow as she and Nyx wondered where the young guard was going. So did the others. Naruto smiled at his teacher and then at his secret lover. Yes, Crow, the female royal guard, was his secret lover. They have been going out for a while as they both met back then during in their training and became friends, then later became lovers. The only ones that knew their relationship was Nyx and Gladio. I'm going with Gladio and my little brother on their journey to the capital and get him ready for his marriage with Lunafreya Nox Florette, he said, making them raise eyebrow. Really? Nyx said as Naruto nodded his head. Yes, and right now they're waiting for me at the front, he said as he was about to walk past them. He signaled Nyx with a nod to his head, letting him know something was not right and to be prepared for anything. Nyx nods his head at him and signals the other to get to the king as he left along with them. But the only one that didn't go with them was Crow as she looked at her lover with concern. Naruto? Is there something wrong? She asked as she walked up to him, resting her head on his chest while he rested his on top of hers while wrapping his arms around her. I had a talk with my father. It felt like this will be the last time I will get to see him, he said as hold her tighter. Take care of him while I'm gone, okay? And also watch your back. I have a bad feeling about all this, okay? He said, feeling her tighten her hold on him. I will. Okay, I better get going, the others are waiting on me. I love you, he said as he looked at her, giving her a passionate kiss with full of love, making her moaned into the kiss while at the same time she returned the gesture. A few minutes as making out and a little tongue action, both couples separated, leaving a small trail of saliva. He gave her a small smile in which she returned with her own. I will call you as soon as I can. She nodded her head once more as he then gave her a quick peck to the lips. He turned, walking towards to where Noctis and the others are. Outside of the building. Once Naruto walked out the building, he saw Noctis standing next to the car while Gladio, Prompto and Ignis are in it with the top uncovered. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He opened them again as he saw his large black motorcycle. Just imagine the Cloud's bike from Advent Children. Behind the regalia. He walked down the stairs as he walked past Noctis. Let's go, he said to his little brother, who nodded his head and got on the regalia as Prompto, who was the one who was gonna drive the car. Naruto got on his bike as he turned on the engine. Looking one last time at the building, he drove off after the others, riding onto their new journey, not knowing what lays ahead of them on their grand adventure. In the middle of nowhere in the open sky with a few clouds passing by, we find our heroes on the side of the road with the regalia as Gladio tried to asking for a ride, but only for the car to pass by them, making the tall man and Noctis sigh. I guess we can forget about hitching our way there, Gladio said as he walked up to Ignis, who was sitting on the driver's seat. I thought people from outside the city were friendly, he said as he leaned on the regalia. You can only go so far on the kindness of strangers, Ignis said while having his head on the wheel as Gladio stretched a bit. Guess we're just gonna have to push her all the way then, he said as he went to the back of the car as Noctis was sitting behind the driver's side of the car while Prompto was laying on the road. Easy for you to say as I've already pushed myself to the brink of death, he said as he looked to where Noctis is. Noct. Where is your brother? Prompto said, breathing heavily while sweating. Don't know. But he sure is lucky his ride didn't get busted like this hunk of junk, he said as Gladio passed by him, tapping him on the head, getting his attention. Well, that's because Naruto always makes sure his bike is a 100% before he heads out, unlike someone. Gladio explained as he said the last part while looking at Prompto, who was laughing sheepishly but then frowns. Oh, I will hate to be that guy, he said as Gladio still looked at him. Aw, come on, don't be that way, you know I didn't mean for this to happen, Prompto said as Gladio rolled his eyes at him. Oh, will you get up? He said as he kicked Prompto's foot, earning him ow from the said boy. Get up, the car isn't gonna move itself, he said while putting both hands behind the car as both boys got up and moved to both sides of the regalia. Geez, I thought the car was supposed to move us, Prompto said as he glared at the car while at the same time putting his hands on the right side. Wouldn't that be nice, or at least Naruto could have brought me along with him, Noctis whined as he grabbed the left side, making Gladio gain a thick mark on his head. Can it? Ready? Making both grunt. Steady. Push, all three grunted as they pushed the car. Man. Why is this thing so heavy? Prompto said between breaths as he pushed the car with all his might. As all three pushed the regalia for what it seemed like forever. Grunting. Unbelievable, Noctis said as he continued to push. Not exactly a fairy tale, wouldn't you say, Prince Noctis? Gladio said as he pushed the car. Looks like we got ourselves a little bit carried away, Ignis said calmly. Look. This? Things happen, Prompto said, almost lost his footing. Let's just hope this isn't some omen, he said as he pushed even harder as Noctis looked towards him. Gladio, do me a favor? What? Push this thing by yourself. All by myself. You won't even notice, if we just let go, Prompto said as he added his own 2 cents. Prompto, don't even think about it. Save some breath for pushing, Ignis said, getting into the conversation as Noctis looked at him. Ignis, come on, time to switch. Nah, we just switched back there, Gladio said while pushing the darn knocked. Prompto said as Ignis looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Your turn, he said as Prompto laughed but then stopped. My hands are killing me. You rather I kill you with mine? Easy there though, guy. Any luck? Only a busy signal. Hold the phone, is it me or was it supposed to be way closer? I assure you the map is correct. The map said Hammerhead is right there. Literally next door. Looks that way on the map of the world. The world's a big old place, filled with wonders. Well, tell that to my legs. Are you guys even pushing? As hard as I can. With everything I got. We'll be there in no time, Ignis said as he then heard loud engine coming, making all of them look up ahead and see Naruto with his bike while behind him was a yellow 18-wheeler. Finally. Took his time, Noctis said as he and Prompto and Gladio stopped moving the car. A few seconds Naruto parked his bike behind the others while the truck turned and reversed just in front of the car. Sorry it took me so long, I had to make a deal with the chef that works in the diner, who had to speak with the owner of the station to come pick up the car and have it fixed free of charge, he said as he gave Gladio and the others some drinks he bought at the store. No worries, it's good that the car busted, that way the princess can get off the car and work, Gladio said, earning him a glare from Noctis. Naruto laughed a little as he then turned serious as he took out a yellow flyer out, handing it to Gladio. What's this? That is the part of the deal. Gather around, gentlemen. Naruto smirked darkly, making the 4 slightly scared. We're hunting ourselves a Bandersnatch, he said as everyone dropped their mouths to the ground in shock. An hour later. In the gas station of Hammerhead. We find our heroes chilling next to the regalia while Naruto was next to his bike cleaning her up from the dirt she had. Then a girl in her mid-20s walked up to them, making all 4 of them except Naruto, who continued to fix his bike, look at her with wide eyes. Hey y'all, sorry to keep y'all waiting, the teen girl said as she looked around for something. Now which one of you is the prince? She asked when Noctis stood up, making her smile. Aha. Hello, your highness, congrats on your wedding, she said as Noctis with a slight frown. Not hitched just yet, he said as the girl nodded her head. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself, she said as she got a good look at him. Wow, Lady Lunafre is groomed to be here in Hammerhead, she said as Nachis was about to say something until Ignis interrupted. It's fine, so are you the one that made the deal? He asked as the girl looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Oh yeah. Well, you're gonna have to ask that with Papa, she said as she looks at the car as Gladio speaks up. Papa? Then that makes you? Gladio said, already thinking she was a daughter or a granddaughter. The girl looks at him and smiles. The name's Cindy, Sid's grease monkey granddaughter, said the now named Cindy when an older man spoke. Roll her in while I'm still young, Cindy, said an old man that is in his late 60s and stood 5'6". The elderly man had silver hair and hazel eyes. He wears a jacket made from red leather, a blue shirt, black gloves, jeans, and a red baseball cap that bears the Hammerhead logo. The elder man frowned at the condition of the car. Looked. My oh my, didn't your daddy ever tell you she's a custom classic, not some rundown clunker? The elderly man said as he walked behind the car, examining it with his hat covering his upper half of his face. The elder man looked up as he looked at Noctis. Prince Noctis. The elderly man nodded at him. Hello, he said, nodding at the old man. The man looked to his left and saw Naruto working on his bike. And you must be Prince Naruto, he said as Naruto stopped what he was doing and looked at the man with a raised eyebrow. I'm no longer a prince but a kingsglaive now, he said as he stopped what he was doing with the bike and walked towards the others. So you must Sid, the owner of Hammerhead, the chef who had to speak about the deal? Naruto asked as now named Sid looked at the young glaive with a small smirk. Sid adjusted his hat at him. Aye, that will be me. So are ye taking the deal or backing out, son? He asked Naruto, who looked at the others as Ignis adjusted his glasses. Taking that as a yes, Prompto waving his hand comically while shaking his head mouthing out no. Taking that as a yes, Gladio smirked as he smashed his fist together. Definitely a yes, and Nachi's well, he was just brooding. Taking that as a yes. Naruto looked back at Sid with a smirk. Oh, we have a deal all right, he said, making Noctis, Prompto and Ignis face palm while Gladio was pumped up. Glad to hear it now. The bastard is just north off here in a pit. Just hear its roar and you'll find it. After you're done just come back and we'll hold our end of the deal, Sid said as Naruto nodded his head and looked at the others. Okay guys, let's head out before it gets dark, Naruto said as the others followed from behind. So what's the plan? Prompto asked as he was ahead of the others while walking backwards looking at them. Fix the car, catch a ride on the boat, and finally Loverboy gets hitched, Gladio said as he received the bird from Noctis. Wait for car repairs, then finally wedding bells in the air, got it. But seriously, what's the plan for the brander whatever? He asked again, only for the others to walk past him as he stopped, and received no answer. Guys. Naruto, Ignis, Gladio, Noctis. Guys, seriously, what's the plan? He said as he ran after them. 5 minutes later, just north of Hammerhead. Nope. Come on Prompto, it's just one of him and 5 of us, it will be easy, Naruto said as all 5 were behind a large boulder hiding from a 15-foot-tall Tyrannosaurus Rex look-alike, but its entire body was covered in multiple spikes on its back, head and tail like Godzilla, and with 3 horns. 1 on his nose and 2 long ones on both sides of his jaw, and that said jaw is like is split in 3 ways like the vampires in Blade 2. Nah, you got me fucked up if you think we're gonna go there and fight that thing, right, Noct? Preemptive strike, Noctis said as he attacked the Brandersnatch from behind with his engine blade, making it roar. While Noctis was attacking the Brandersnatch, Naruto looked at Prompto with smirk as Prompto gave him the bird without even looking at him. With all my hate, Naruto laughed as he and the others all charged at the Brandersnatch. Prompto ran to the side, firing his revolver at the Brandersnatch's side, while Noctis' strike warped to the cliff away from the dino, while Gladio attacked with his broadsword, shattering one of its horns from its jaw. Ignis. Gladly. Ignis threw 3 daggers at the brander on the side of its head, back and right leg as Noctis warped strikes onto those marked daggers, shattering some of its scales, making it roar in pain. Naruto roared in the air as he appeared in a silver warp and split his fusion sword in 2 and delivered a X-shaped slash at the Brandersnatch. The beast roared as it did a 360 tail sweep, sending Gladio, Naruto and Noctis away, while Ignis helped Gladio while Prompto helped Noctis. Naruto got up, combining his fusion sword back into 1. Gladio. Got it. He charged at the Brandersnatch with both his hands on his broadsword and did a 360 spin, adding it more force to the attack, and slashed at the dino, leaving it a large gash on its side of its stomach. Tempest. The Brandersnatch roared in pain as it raised its foot, attempting to crush Gladio, only for it to be parried by Naruto with his engine fusion sword. Raw. Naruto countered as he sent the Brandersnatch to the ground as it tried to get up. Prompto. Naruto shouted at the blonde, who smirked and did a cowboy's standoff stance. All in the bullets, baby, he said as he fired at the stomach, making a fist-size hold on the dino's stomach, making it screech. Naruto. Brother, as both charged at the dino at the same time. Raw. Buster slash. Naruto's engine fusion sword roared to life as it was covered in golden light, slashing at the shot hole that Prompto made as Noctis warped from behind Naruto, attempting to slash at the same spot, only for the brothers to be kicked away by the dino as it got up to its feet and roared, sending a shockwave send the others skidding back. Once the Brandersnatch stopped its roar, its entire body scales turned red as it was in rage. Oh shit, it's pissed, Naruto said as he then dodged the beast as it tried to ram at Naruto like a raging bull. Noctis, by any chance do you have any element on you? Naruto asked as his brother nodded and drew out a black ball with yellow light and a few sparks coming out of it. Alright, I will draw it towards the water. Once I have its full attention, I will signal you to throw it. He explained his plan as Noctis nodded as he and the others hid until it was just Naruto and the target. Alright, you ugly son bitch, you want me, then come get it, Naruto said to his target as he split his blades once again as man and beast charged one another. Once they met halfway, Naruto jumped over the dino, stabbing one of his blades to the back, making the Bandersnatch retaliate as he rolled like a dog would, trying to shake off Naruto, in which work as Naruto ran towards the water with the beast following suit. Once he reached the water, Naruto turned around and sent a large blue crescent moon-shaped slash at the Brander in the face, making it stop in its tracks, shaking off the sudden attack as Naruto jumped on top of the large rock and looked towards Noctis. Noctis, now. I got it. He threw the yellow orb at the Brander as large purple lightning bolt shot from the sky at the dino, making it roar in pain as its entire body started to turn charcoal black with flames coming out of its mouth and eyes. Once the lightning died down, the target stopped roaring and moving as it fell to the side with a large thud as its corpse was still smoking thanks to the lightning and along with the water, making it twice as powerful. Naruto hopped off the boulder as the others walked closer towards the dinosaur, still on guard in case it attacks. Noctis poked it with his engine blade to see if it is finally dead, and to their relief it is. Naruto slashed at the dead Brander's horn as evidence that they killed it. Okay, that takes care of that, he said as Prompto cheered. We survived, let's celebrate by eating something that is already dead, he said as Naruto stared at the corpse and then at Ignis. Oi Ignis, you think you can cook something up from out of this? Ignis studied the Bandersnatch corpse a few seconds until he cut up a large piece that wasn't burned that bad. Ignis smiled. I think we found our dinner for tonight, he said as the others cheered as they left the pit, heading straight for Hammerhead and complete their deal. Back at Hammerhead. Hey old man, we finished our deal, now's your turn to hold your end of the bargain, Noctis said as he was smacked at the back of the head by Naruto, who shook his head at him along with Ignis and Gladio. Rule 1 of the desert: never fuck with the mechanic who is helping you fix your ride or you'll regret it, he said as Noctis nervously nodded his head when they see Sid come out of his garage with a few oil stains on his clothing. Oh, you're back. So did you get it done? He asked when he saw Naruto toss him a piece of the tusk of the Bandersnatch. Sid examined it for a while until he tossed the bone to the trash and nodded his head at the gang. Great job, and now it's our turn to return the favor. The way the car is, as she won't be ready till sun rays, so by then do what you want, he said as he went back inside and got started on the car as the others looked at one another and shrugged their shoulders. Suddenly Noctis heard his phone ringing as he picked it up and answered. Who could this be? Hello. Hey, it's Cindy, y'all got a minute? She asked while Noctis looked at the others, who then nodded their heads. Yeah, sure. That's great. I got a great hunting for ya, only this time it's a person. Fella named Dave went off and we haven't heard from him since. I reckoned he stacked himself on a old rundown shack. Old, rundown. Yup, it's just out west of here. Got it, we'll take a look. Thanks, I owe ya, Cindy said as she hanged up the phone as Noctis put his phone in his pocket and looked at the others. I got a call from Cindy saying there was this Dave and they haven't heard from him since, and that he's hiding in a rundown shack just west of here, he explained as the others nodded their heads. In the middle of nowhere somewhere west of Hammerhead. Ow! Prompto screamed as he got stung in the ass by a large scorpion. Why is it always me? He cried on the floor, rolling around trying to ease the pain. Naruto came out of nowhere and cut the same scorpion that stung Prompto in half. Naruto put this sword over his shoulder as he looked at Prompto. It's because you're an idiot, he said, turning to look at the others who just finished killing their own scorpions. Noctis sighed as he put away his engine blade and looked around. If I was a old shack where wool aha, there it is, he said as he pointed the shack that was just behind the large rock. They ran towards the shack only to see it abandoned on the outside. The gang went inside to see no one in there except there was a book with a note, and in it was some writing on it. Noctis read the note, then he was pushed aside by Gladio when some type of dog that looked like it hasn't been eating in days attacked from behind, and it wasn't alone. Sneaky bastards, I give them that, Prompto said while summoning his gun and fired at a few of them, making them scatter, as the others picked their targets. 2 minuets later had to skip that part since they aren't very strong and they're easily killed. The others put up their weapons away after they were finished with the dogs. Okay. This Dave guy isn't here. So the only thing we could assume, he's either dead or he's hiding somewhere else, Naruto said as the rest nodded. Well, come on, let's look around and see for ourselves. He walked out the shack with the others following, and the first thing Naruto saw was a windmill next to a small shed surrounded by another pack of Sabertusk. I believe the one we're looking for is in there. Ignis said, adjusting his glasses as Naruto agreed with him. Naruto looked at his brother. Noctis, warp to that windmill and get the drop on them on my signal, and we'll take care of the rest. Naruto explained his plan as Noctis nodded his head at the idea. Piece of cake, he said as he threw his engine blade at the windmill, and hanged on as the rest charged and engaged at the pack. Naruto dodged a swipe from one of them as then parried with another that tried to get the drop on him from the side. While Naruto was dealing with his Prompto jumped back, dodging the Sabertusk that was trying to bite him, firing a few rounds at it, killing the animal. Gladio jumped in the air as he slammed his broadsword down, cutting one of them in half as blood splattered all over. Ignis sidestepped out the way, making the dog miss. In slow motion, Ignis took the chance and strikes at the dog with his daggers, one on the stomach and the other to the neck. The dog fell rolling to the ground as it whimpered a few times until its body stopped moving. We go back to Naruto as he split his sword into two. Holding it in a reversed grip, Naruto charged at the dog and did a side 360 spin, slamming his engine fusion sword at the dog's back, cutting it in half from the waist below. The other regrouped in front of the shed as more came in front of them. Naruto smirked as he had them where he wanted. Noctis now. After those words left his mouth, Noctis appeared behind the Sabertusk, taking them by surprise as he quickly killed them. Great work, Noct. Prompto congratulated him, but then everyone started to hear noises. He said, "Hey, who's out there?" A man opened the door as he stood, a 6'0". He had a short brown hair with a small beard and a mustache. He wore a black shirt with a brown vest with black cargo pants and finally dark brown boots. "Well, what do you know? Your name's Dave, right? We were asked to look for you," Gladio said. The man now named Dave grunted as he held his injured leg as he looked at the others. "Yay, that's me, and also sorry. I didn't mean to cause any of y'all any trouble for looking for me. Been here for a while, no thanks to my sprained ankle and these varmints," Dave explained to them as he looked at the dead Sabertusk, then looked back at the others. "But them varmints ain't nothing to laugh about. I gave them hell, but I got outnumbered thanks to their numbers. But enough about that, thanks for helping me out, but before you can leave, can y'all do me a small favor?" he said as Noctis nodded his head. "Ask away." Dave nodded in gratitude. "While I was supposed to take care of these Sabertusk, I had another varmint I had to take care of, but as you can see I am in no condition. Think you can lend me a hand?" "Of course, just tell us where to go," Ignis said. Dave smirked at them. "I like y'all, you bunch got guts, that's for sure. Let me tell y'all where I last saw him," he said as Noctis took out the map that Cindy gave them just before they left to kill the Brandersnatch and gave it to Dave. "Here you go." He gave Dave the map as he pointed the location he last saw the beast. Once Dave gave them the direction, Naruto and the others headed straight for the target, but before they can get any further, Ignis grabbed Noctis's shoulder, getting his attention and the others. "Noctis, I believe it would be wise if we set up camp. It's almost close to night. You know what happens at night," he said as Noctis looked up and see that it is almost dark. "I guess you're right," he said as Ignis nodded his head in approval. "In that case, let's look for a spot to make camp," he said as Gladio called them, getting their attention. "If we're looking for to set up camp, one already see a perfect spot over that large boulder just right on our 6, he said as he pointed his thumb right behind him where they can see a large boulder. "That looks like a good spot as there is no animal that can get us while we have our guard down," Naruto said as he examined the large boulder. "Then it's settled," Prompto said as he and the others walked towards the perfect campsite. Once they got there, Ignis and Gladio had to stay while Naruto and the others went back to Hammerhead and pick up some groceries for Ignis to prepare for dinner with the meat they picked up from the Brandersnatch and the camp equipment from the car. Upon making it back, Naruto helped out Gladio with the tent while Prompto and Noctis set up the chairs and light up the campfire, and finally Ignis light up the outdoor stove to prepare for lunch. After finishing setting up the tent and everything, Noctis, Prompto, Gladio and Naruto played Kings, forgot the name of the game, on their phones while they waited for Ignis to finish with their food. "Gentlemen, dinner is served," he said as he laid their plates of barbecue ribs from the meat of the Brandersnatch in front of them. The others looked at the meat with drool coming out of their mouths. "Aye, it's beautiful." Prompto looked at his food with tears coming out of his eyes. "You said it, come one, let's dig in before it gets cold," Naruto announced as they all dig in at the food that stood before them. An hour later, night time. Once they were done, we find Naruto, who was sitting in front of the campfire enjoying quietness by himself while the others were already asleep. A few minuets of silence. Naruto sighed and stood up, but not before stretching, and then headed towards the tent, only to stop dead in his tracks as he felt slender arms wrapped around his neck. Turning around quickly while summoning his engine fusion sword, to see who it was, but only to see nothing but darkness except the light from the campfire. What the hell? He muttered to himself as he looked around, then at full moon in the clear dark sky. Back in Insomnia. Somewhere in the royal city at night, we find Nyx standing in a very dark room with the only light of the room on. He was stood with his head down while his hands were on what appeared to be a large silver platter table cart. Nyx stood in silence until he raised his head up with a few tears falling from his eyes as he looked at the ceiling. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and opened them again as he looked at a large black bag that laid on the table in front of him. The bag that stood before him was actually the dead body of Crow, who had her eyes closed with a small smile on her face inside the dead body bag. Nyx continued to look at his dead friend when he felt a hand placed on his shoulder. He looked back to see Libertas Ostium, his best friend since childhood, who also had tears on his eyes, shook his head at him as he left the room, leaving Nyx by himself. Nyx looked at the door that his best friend left, then back at Crow. He slowly laid his hand on her forehead for a moment as he then zipped up the body bag and headed straight for the door. Grabbing the door knob, Nyx looked one last time at Crow as he opened the door and left. The light in the morgue turned off, leaving Crow corpse in the dark. Outside the door, Nyx walked down the hall to meet up with Libertas, who was waiting for the elevator. Once he reached him, both stood in silence as they waited for the elevator. Nyx. How are we gonna tell Naruto? Libertas looked at his closest friend, not coming up with anything as Nyx said nothing. Nyx. I don't know. But whoever did this, our sister, they're gonna pay, in blood. He coldly said as he took something out of his pocket and looked at it. In his hand was an expensive diamond wedding ring that was confiscated from Crow's dead body. Libertas looked at the ring, making more tears fall from his eyes. Ding! Both Kingsglaive whipped their tears while putting on their serious face. When the elevator doors opened, they walked in with the door closing behind them. As the elevator was going down, Nyx looked at his clenched fist that was holding the ring. He thought in his mind on how he will tell his apprentice that his future wife was killed in cold blood. But another thing came to his mind for sure. If the Empire had a hand in anything to do with Crow's death, then the Empire are gonna have a one pissed off Luces on their hands, literally. It was morning in the world of Eos as we find our heroes waking up from their well-earned rest. Yawn. Man, that was a good-ass rest, Naruto said as he stretched while the others agreed with him and joined his stretching with him. Sigh, I'll say. But I still prefer sleeping on a bed, Noctis said, grunting as he heard a few pops while stretching. I hear that, Prompto agreed as he finished with his. There's nothing wrong sleeping in the great outdoors, right Specs? Gladio said, annoyed while enjoying the sunrise view that stood before him. I can agree with you on that, Ignis said, agreeing with the giant man. Well, let's pack up and continue with our little side mission before we head back to the car, Naruto said as the others agreed. 5 minutes had passed as we see our heroes finished packing their equipment. But before they could leave, Naruto saw a 3-colored spike stones around the campsite. Hey Noct. Naruto called his brother as Noctis lifted the camping chairs and looked back at Naruto. Sup? Hey, you see these little spiked stones around us? He said as the young prince looked around the camp and saw what Naruto meant. Yay, what about them? I need you to absorb them and make a few spells for us, as it will come in handy later on, Naruto explained to his brother, who then nodded his head as he handed Naruto the chairs heading towards the stones. What's Noct doing? Prompto said as he carried the other 2 chairs stand next to the Uked at the only blonde of the group. Little Noctis is trying to gather elemental nodes with the power thanks to the crystal that will assist us in our journey, Naruto said, explaining as he watched Noctis absorb the firestone. As he finished it, he moved on to the frost stone next. You said he could absorb the elements thanks to the crystal, right? He said, making the other Luces nod his head. Then that means you can do it too, Naruto? Prompto said as Naruto looked at him. I can, but I can't, he said. Well, how come? Size. It's complicated to say the least, let's leave it at that, he told Prompto. But before that said blonde can say anything, Noctis ran towards them until he stood before Naruto. Okay, I gathered the elements, so what next? Now you had them into this flasks here, he said as he took out a small bag that contained more than 6 the same small black sphere that they used yesterday. Hey, isn't that the same spheres you used on the Brandersnatch? Yes, now I want you to add any of the elements you just absorbed into this. But be careful on how much you add to it. The more you add, the powerful the spell will be, just like how you used the Thundiga Dad gave you on that Brandersnatch. Naruto said as his little brother nodded his head at him and took the bag and added some elements on said flasks. Noctis added fire to one as he and Prompto were in awe as the sphere turned red with small embers coming out of it. Cool. Both said at the same time as Noctis added other elements to the others, while Naruto and the other grown-ups looked at the young boys make experiments on the flasks. We done here? Gladio said as both boys finished adding elements onto the flasks and nodded. Very well, let's move on as we have a dualhorn to hunt and a car to return to. Ignis said as the others left the camping equipment at the car and continued on the little mission for the dualhorn. After minuets of running and fighting some sabertusk and other wild beast, we find Noctis and the others hiding behind a large rock looking at their target. The target was a large rhino-like beast with a large horn on its head as its eyes were glowing red with black highlights. Huh, that's a dualhorn. Yes. But not your run-of-the-mill breed. We best make a quick work of it, Ignis said as he adjusted his glasses examining the beast. The others nodded their head as they moved slowly towards the large rampaging animal, but then the dualhorn moved its head to the right, spotting them. Oh shit. Prompto cursed while sweating as the dualhorn moved its whole body facing them. Wait a sec. Gladio said as he stood in front of the others while taking out his greatsword. What's wrong, big guy? Sacred. Prompto smirked as he was then smacked at the back of the head by Naruto. You oughta be. Look how vicious that dualhorn looks, Naruto said, pointing at the animal. Prompto, Noctis and Ignis looked at it as they saw it growling. Looks pretty tame to me, Noctis looking at it with his hand on his chin. Roar. The dualhorn charged towards them as the others took a step back, then out of nowhere Gladio slashed at its leg, making it crash down to the ground. The others cheered, but then Ignis and Naruto stood in front of the young boys as the dualhorn rose up and roared. Naruto charged as the dualhorn tried to strike at them, only for it to meet Naruto, intercepting it. Both man and beast struggled for dominance as Gladio and Noctis slashed at its horn, shattering it as the duel roared in pain for the loss of its horn. Ignis slashed at its side while Prompto jumped on its back and shot at it multiple times. Naruto ran to the side and stabbed it on its leg, and the dualhorn retaliated by rampaging around like a wild bull, making the others jumps back. Whoa! Prompto grabbed hold of the dualhorn's fur as he holds on for dear life while the others stayed back, not getting any closer to the duel. Guys, get me out of this thing. Hold Prompto, Noctis said as Naruto split his EFS in two and threw one at the dualhorn's face, making it stop ramping as Prompto flew off it thanks to its sudden stop. Aw, this is gonna hurt, Prompto screamed as he covered his face as he was about to collide face first to the rocks. Naruto threw his other sword towards the rocks as he warped, leaving silver afterimage glass-like particles behind. The older Luces reappeared, catching Prompto before he could collide to the rocks. That was close, thanks Naruto, Prompto said to the older Luces, who nodded in acceptance. Talk later, for now let's bring this thing down, he said, with the blonde nodding his head as they both prepared themselves. The dualhorn charged at the two as Naruto warped towards it, meeting each other in the center as they one again fight for dominance once again. Now Prompto, Naruto exclaimed as the gunslinger fired a high-powered shot straight to the dualhorn's eye, making it screech. Naruto took the chance and attacked by slashing at the dualhorn face, leaving a large gash. Noctis and Gladio attacked the side with their great swords, knocking the beast over to the ground. Ignis took the chance and threw a spear at the animal's throat. The dualhorn struggled to move and breath, but thanks to the spear that was in its throat it was impossible. The gang looked at the dualhorn struggle to breath, not wanting it to suffer anymore. Ignis walked towards it and stabbed it even deeper, killing the dualhorn. Once the animal was dead, Ignis pulled out the spear and put it away. I guess that's that, Prompto said. All that's left is the car now, Gladio said as he crossed his arms. Yeah, come on, let's get going before we miss the boat. And when it gets dark. Naruto said as he walked away following him from behind as the others. Back in Hammerhead. Sighed. Man, that was a long way. Noctis said as he and the others made it back in Hammerhead. I need to get in better shape, Prompto said, falling to his knees, breathing heavily. Sighed. You should have just pretended we were walking to the car, Ignis said, shaking his head at the two. Don't know why they're complaining, they should at least be glad we got a good workout out of it, Gladio said, looking fine, like the run didn't even bother him in the slightest. Let's just get the car and get this over with already, Naruto said, annoyed as he walked up towards Cindy, who was leaning against the car. Sorry for the wait, just adding a few finishing touches and here she is. Ain't she pretty? She said. Whistles. She looks too good for the road, Gladio said as he looked at the regalia in awe. Hey, let's take a picture with her. How about it? Prompto asked as he took out his camera. Naruto and the others looked at one another and shrugged their shoulders at him. Sure, they all said in unison, making the only blonde of the team cheer. They all gather around the regalia while Prompto adjusted the camera and gave it to Cindy, who happily accepted. Say cheese, y'all, cheese. They all said it as a flash goes off. The others all relaxed as Prompto got his camera back from Cindy. Thanks. She nodded with a smile on her face. All the more reason to ride with care. Oh, and before I forget, y'all won't mind making a little delivery for me? She asked as Prompto looked back at Noctis, who started thinking for a bit. After 10 seconds he accepted and nodded his head at Prompto. The said blonde nodded his head and looked at Cindy. Sure. Thanks, as I thought you will say yes, so I already put the package already in the trunk for ya, she said as she pointed to the south of Hammerhead. There you will find a motel on your way to Galden. There you will find the owner. I will be most appreciative. Like grandpa, like grandkid. Noctis muttered to himself, but Ignis, Naruto and Gladio still heard him and chuckled. Well, I will be seeing y'all. Cindy waved at them as she left, leaving the guys by themselves. Well, now that the car is all ready for the road, Noct, would you like to take for a little test drive? Ignis asked him, making the young prince nod, and took the keys from the cook. Sure, why not, it will a break from driving, Noctis said as the others nodded. Well, what are we waiting for, let's hit the road, Naruto said as he walked to his rebellion, name of his bike. Hey Naruto, when are you gonna let me ride this baby? Prompto said, looking at Rebellion with stars in his eyes. Naruto stopped and turned his head and looked at him in the eye. Not a chance in hell, he said while getting on and revived the engine and rode off, followed by the others behind. 10 minuets later, in a small motel stop in Long-Width rest area, Naruto and the others found themselves in their destination as they parked their regalia, Rebellion, in front of the parking lot of the motel. Finally we made it, let's stack up some potions and stuff, Prompto said as he go off the passenger side. Nice to know you're being helpful for a change, he said as he got off from behind the driver's side. Prompto grew a tick mark on his head and looked at Noctis. Oi, what do you mean for a change? He said, only for his tick mark to grow when he saw Noctis ignore him. The gang walked to the front of the motel. Bark. Naruto and the others looked to the side to see a brown dog with amber-like eyes with a black bag with a green ribbon strapped around its side. Hey, isn't that? Prompto said as the dog stood in front of Noctis, who leaned down on one knee as he petted the dog on the head. Good to see you again, Umbra, he said with a smile on his face when the dog barked and wiggled its tail at him. Man, that dog can really track a scent, Gladio said as he looked at the dog in wonder. Certainly knows how to find us, Ignis said, adding his 2 cents into the conversation. Better question is, how can he find us and get here so fast? Naruto said as he looked at the dog in concern. How do you always know, boy? Prompto asked as Noctis took out a red journal and looked at it. Just a sec, he said to the dog as he started to remember the notebook. Flashback 12 years ago. In a large white bedroom was a 8-year-old Noctis sitting on the bed with a tall 10-year-old Luna sitting beside him. In front of them was 2 dogs, one snow white, the other brown, sleeping on the floor. Noctis opens a red journal and on the very first page was a blue flower. Nice flower, young Noctis said as he continued to turn the pages, making the girl next to him giggle. It's the same kind we sewed our crowns from, she said, making the young prince widen his eyes in remembrance. Oh yeah, Silly blossoms, he said as he continued to look at the notebook on his lap. Luna got closer to Noctis, getting his attention. So. The girl looked nervous with small blush on her face as she looked at him in the eyes. I have a favor to ask. Take the journal with you when you go, she said as Noctis closed the journal and looked at her. Sure, he said happily, making Luna smile, and then she continued. That's not all. I want you to put something in the book and send it back. She looked at him with a smile on her face. Would you do that for me? Noctis smiled as he nodded his head at his future broom-to-be. Yeah, he said as they continued to talk as everything was covered in a blinding light. Flashback end to the present. Noctis smiles as he looked at the red notebook in his hands. He nervously looks to both his sides, opens it, and the first page shows a girl surrounded with 2 silly blossoms. Under the image it shows what was written on. It's come time for me to leave Tenebrae. He smiles as he writes down his own answer on the notebook. After he was done, he looks at what he wrote. Finally going to see you after all these years. He closed the notebook and put it on a black bag that was around Umbra. All set. Take care out there, all right boy, he said as Umbra barked in acceptance. Umbra barked as he left to who knows where. I know. You're not gonna tell me? Prompto asked with his arms crossed. Then don't ask, Noctis said, but Prompto ignored it. What was that about? Sighs. You don't say. 1 hour later, the others left the rest station after they helped the hunter they saved Dave retrieve a dog tag for him. Now we find Noctis and the others on the road once more, heading to Golden Key. Hey, I see the sea, Prompto said excitedly. I see it too, Noctis said with a small smirk as he gazed at the open sea. I seems we arrived to Golden Key. I kinda wanna go for a dip. Gladio, enjoying the view, then returned back to reading his book. Hey, is that a big mountain behind it? Noctis asked while pointing at the giant mountain that was far from Gladden. No, that's an island, Ignis said as he continued to drive. Nobody goes to Golden for island, though they go to kick back and get messages, Prompto said as he put his hands behind his head and looked in front of the road. And savor the seafood, it's famously delicious, Ignis said. Sounds great, Noctis said as he imagined enjoying the messages and eating delicious food. Something to look forward to, Gladio said as he looked back to see Naruto riding Rebellion behind them, signaling they will be there shortly. Naruto nodded his head at him. Once they got to their destination, they parked the Rebellion in the parking spot as they walked to the dock leading them to the boats. Once they made it, they see a man about the same height as Naruto. The man was middle-aged as he had red-violet hair, amber eyes, and strong facial features. He dresses in a long, black jacket that has a white and gray trim, as well as matching trousers. He wears a red scarf and a hooded, gray and white mantle on his shoulders. I'm afraid you're out of luck, the man said as he stood before them as the others looked at him in confusion. Are we? Noctis asked with a raised eyebrow as the man looked back, then looked at them again. The boats bring you here? He asked as Prompto nervously asked him. What about them? The man looked back as he scratched the back of his head. Well, they won't be taking you forth. Gladio stepped up a bit. What's your story, if you don't mind us asking? The mysterious man smiled as he walked past them. Not at all. For you see, I am an impatient traveler, ready to turn ship. As they ceasefire is getting us nowhere, he said as he took something out of his pocket and threw towards Noctis, making the young prince flinch, but Gladio caught the object before it could even reach Noctis. Gladio and the others looked at his hand to see it was nothing but a coin, a really valuable looking coin. What's this? Some kind of souvenir? He asked as he looked back at the man. Hey Noct, have you seen this before? No, he said as the man pointed at the coin. Consider it that your allowance. Huh? Naruto walked in front of the others as he looked at the mysterious man with his eyes narrowed. Yeah, and who's allowing us? He asked as the man stepped back with his hands raised up. A man with no consequence, he said as he smiled, turning to walk away. Yay, right, Noctis said while they all watched the man leave. Unknown to any of them, Naruto and Noctis were looking at the man with their eyes flashing from dark blue to silver, red until it stayed to their dark blue. Why do I get the feeling that this won't be the last we see of that guy? Prompto said, making most of the group to agree with him. Let's go, we have to see this for ourselves, Naruto said while turning to walk towards the port. The others follow him from behind as they all walk to the port until Upon making it they see nothing, not a single boat in sight. Man, what gives not a single boat in sight? Prompto said as he scratched the back of his head while the others took a deep breath and turned to walk back to the bike. According to my sources, the Empire are giving us strict orders not to let any vessels leave the docks to Alticia. A mysterious young man with silver hair said, getting their attention. Real shame if you were late to your wedding, right, Prince Noctis? The young man smiled at them. The name's Dino, by the way, pleasure. The crown of Luces, bounty hunting in his fancy car. Surely you noticed, at least not by this reporter. He said as leaned forward a bit and continued. Lucky for you, this reporter has integrity. If you want to remain incognito, I'll respect your wish. For a small favor, he said with a small smirk. Sure, what would that favor be? The young prince said, making Dino smile. Hey, I knew you come around, let me see your map. He asked as Noctis gave him the map as Dino pointed what he wanted for his small favor and gave it back. I marked what you needed to go on your map. As all I want you gentlemen is to find some rough gemstones like this one. Do this for me and your ship will come. He said as Noctis and the other nodded and left. Once they were far, Prompto turned his head at Noctis. Man, dude, got your number knocked. And what surprised me was that he didn't recognize you, Naruto. He said to both Luces as both said. Luces shrugged their shoulders. Not like we were hiding it or anything. Noctis said, not caring. I care not if he knows me or not, all that matters is that we get this done. Naruto said as the others agreed and left to go for the gems. I am gonna skip it when they come back with the gems and give it to Dino, and now we find them already spending the night in one of the rooms. We find Naruto outside on the dock with his phone trying to call his fiancée but got nothing but busy calls. We're sorry, but the number you're trying to reach is not in service right now, please leave a message after the beep. Hey. Crow, it's Naruto, is everything okay out there? I tried calling you and the others but no one is picking up. Please call me back once you get this, I love you. He said, hanging up. Sighing in frustration, he looked at the sea as a light breeze blew past him. Still not answering. A voice said, making Naruto turn around to see his little brother with his arms crossed. No. Why are you still awake? It's kinda pretty late, don't you think? As prince you need your beauty sleep. He said as Noctis waved him off as he stood beside his oldest brother. Couldn't sleep as I tried calling Dad, but all I got was the same, that the line is busy at the moment. He said as both brothers stood in silence as they both gazed at the sea. So, when were you going to tell me and Dad about this girl? Noctis asked as he continued to look at the sea. Naruto looked at his brother with the corner of his eye, then returned his gaze at the sea. I was planning on telling you both after your wedding. Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head while Noctis closed his eyes and nodded. I see. Well, I'm happy for you as I can't wait to meet her. Noctis said as he turned to walk back to their room. I'ma go hit the sack, talk to you tomorrow, he said. Yeah. Sure. Naruto said as Noctis walked into his room and closed the door. Once he was gone, Naruto stayed outside for a few minuets until he decided to go to sleep himself. Not knowing what was happening back at the Crown City, nor why nobody was answering. Back in Insomnia hours later. Boom. A large Niflheim fleet fired its massive cannon, destroying a building along with everything surrounding it, killing hundreds if not thousands of lives. Boom. The fleet that once fired the building was then destroyed by a large sword made out of stone, making it explode along with a few other fleet around it. Boom. Inside on one of the buildings that was falling due to it being on its last legs thanks to continuing assault of the Empire, were two figures screaming at each other as they both charged at one another in the middle of the sky in the now blazing crown city of Insomnia, and at the same time giant statues of the previous kings, queens of Luces are fighting Niflheim cruisers or giant demons. The two figures clashed blades with much force that sent them flying back. While still in the air, both figures regained their balance as they both landed on two colossus figures that were having a stare down. The man that was standing on the stone warrior was none other Nix Ulrich, and the other figure standing on the other side on the demon's shoulder was Titus Dratos, who was wearing a magic armor and is captain of the Kingsglaive and Nix's former mentor and now traitor. Nix fell on one knee, breathing hard as he looked towards the soon-to-be sunrise. He then looked back at his now burned arm. Clenching it into a fist, he looked back at his former captain, who also was breathing hard due to their battle they were having. What of your king's power now? he said as he continued breathing hard. They've given you a burden you cannot hope to bear. He continued to speak while Nyx held his Ulrich Kirkus in a reverse grip. I told you before. Just wanting doesn't win wars, he said as the statue of the first king and diamond weapon are known as the demon that was attacking the crown city charged one another. The statue of the first king warped and slashed at the demon in the face with much force that it shattered its blade, making the first loose his attack with its bare hands. Upon the exchange, Nyx and Titus charged again as they both met in combat on the shoulder of the first king. Titus slashed multiple times at Nyx, who was blocking all the attacks with a small glass shield or daggers. Thunder. Nyx fired a small lightning from his hand, sending Titus back, giving the young glaive some space as they entered combat once more. Drados slashed again, but Nyx leaned back, making the former captain miss, giving the young glaive a chance to tackle him, send both warriors falling down 100 feet to the ground. Somewhere on the ground of the destroyed city of Insomnia. We find Nyx on the ground while the former captain stood up with some struggle, but thanks to his magic armor that took most of the damage of the fall. Drados grunted as he took out Nyx's dagger from his chest, making little bit of blood gush out. Breathing hard. For the honor of my home. I fought and killed under a king I loathed, he said as Nyx struggled to get up. And still he betrayed me. He betrayed us all. We fought for the same thing. All of us. But you've looked too long on the past, Nyx said as he had his hands on his knees trying to catch his breath. You're blind to the future, he said as he warped towards Drados, but was then grabbed by the neck from said captain and was lifted up. Predictable. Unlike you, I learned from history, the captain said while Nyx tried to escape from his capture, but to no avail. That. Maybe so, but you are a slave to the past. Yes, but Amon's past is his pride, Drados said as Nyx tried to escape from his grasp, but then his arm ignited into flames in which started to melt Naruto's armor. No. Because my pride is reshaping the future. He warped behind Drados, who then turned just in time for Nyx to stab him in the throat, making the former captain fall. At that time the smoke cleared, showing the statue of the first king destroying the diamond weapon's core, killing it. Nyx looked at the statue, then back at Drados as he sat down while looking at him, shaking his head at him as he spoke. I know now you did what you did, but you have to understand King Regis did what he did for the future. And that future lies within his sons, and as long as they continue on there is still hope. For our homes, he explained to Drados, whose eyes were slowly closing. Hope. He whispered slowly as his eyes finally closed, showing at that moment Titus Drados died. After the former captain passed, Nyx took a deep breath and turned to look at the sun that was rising. Looking away from the sun to his now burning body was slowly fading into the wind. Ha ha ha. Sighs, huh, not the worst way to go, but it's something. Rule well, young king. And good luck to you as well, Naruto. Nyx said as he continued to look at the sunrise, enjoying its beauty one last time as a new day approaches. Hours later, back with Noctis and the others. Noctis grunted, opening his eyes, blinking a few times. Yawning, he sat up, stretching, and saw Glady up. Yawn. Morning, he said. Morning, Prompto said as he looked at the view out the window. Hey, Gladio said as he continued to look at the TV. Hey, where Specs and Naruto? The young prince asked. They should be back any minute now. As soon as he said 2 words, the door opened, getting their attention as they saw Ignis walked inside with a solemn look. Ignis looked at Noctis, sad an expression on his face in which Noctis raised his eyebrow in confusion. What's with that look for, and where's Naruto? He asked, but Ignis ignored him and looked down as he gave Gladio the newspapers. It's in all the papers, he said as Gladio read it, making his eyes widen, getting the other 2 attention. What is? Noctis said as Prompto walked next to Gladio and read the paper as his eyes widened in shock. Insomnia Falls, he said, making Noctis widen his eyes. What? This some kind of joke? Cause if it is, it isn't funny, he said. I need you to calm down so I can explain. I'm as calm as I'm gonna be, he said as he stood in front of Ignis. Last night the Crown City was attacked by Imperials. As treaty room tampers flared, blast lit the night sky. When the smoke about Citadel had cleared, the king was found dead. Gladio read the paper as Noctis and others stood next to him and listened. As Gladio continued read every detail, they all looked crestfallen until he read to the end. Noctis' eyes widen. Wait, hold on. We had no way of knowing. What? Knowing what? That last night the signing that insomnia. But the wedding Altacia. Yes, that was the plan. Yet the reports of the invasion are all the same. How could every headline in the kingdom be wrong? Ignis explained as Noctis gritted his teeth as he thought about the treaty and everything. All of it where lies, he said as he looked down. Prompto looked at the window as he bit his lip, if only. Gladio sighed as he looked cooked. What else do we know? Only for his answer receive was a no. Damn. Then we have no choice but to go back and see with our one eyes until we know for sure. He suggested it as Prompto turned. Then we go back to Insomnia. That might not be safe for us there. Ignis argued. It might not be safe for us here neither, he said. Then we turn back. Gladio nodded his head as they all looked at Noctis, who sitting in the couch. Noctis sat in silence, then looked at his friends. Yeah. Somewhere in a hill far from the crown city. Gaw. We need backup. Please no. Monster. Take him out. Boom. And massive explosion occurred as a small group of Imperial soldiers shot a rocket, causing an explosion, while some shot rounds to whoever it was in the explosion. After wasting a full clip, they added another clip when one of them raised their hands to ceasefire and made a gesture to advance. The Imperials surrounded the smoke with their weapons ready as one of the captains ordered two of them to scout. Following his orders, two Imperials walked into the smoke as the others stayed behind with their weapons aimed at the smoke. Anything, the captain said to the soldiers who were in the smoke. I got nothing. I think we got high gua, the Imperial said, but was cut off when he had his other companion screamed. Negative, I repeat, negative, open fire. Ah. The Imperial said, but was sent flying towards his comrades with a large gash on his chest. Fire. They didn't need to be told twice as they fired at the smoke when large blade was thrown from the smoke, impaling a soldier, scaring some that were next to that said soldier. Get away from him, the captain said, but was too late when a figure appeared in a silver warp with his hand holding the handle of the blade that impaled the Imperial and did a blitz. Like Final Fantasy XIII assault blitz. Cutting the impaled Imperial in half along with two others that were next to him, causing a whirlwind of blood around the figure. Fire. Fire. The captain fired at the figure, who disappeared in a silver warp and reappeared in front of him, cutting him in half from head to toe. He killed the captain. Run, one of them said as he made a run for it, but his head was severed from his body, making blood gush out. None of you are leaving here alive, the figure said coldly as he charged at them as they fired at him, but he dodged every shot by leaving sliver after images of him. The figure slashed at one of the Imperials to the chest and grabbed him and used him as a meat shield from the rain of bullets aimed at him. The figure charged with the corpse at the rain of bullets. When he was close to one of them, the figure threw the bloody corpse at him, making the soldier fall. The man then slashed at the other soldier, severing his legs, making that said soldier scream, but his screaming stopped when his head was cut in half from the jaw. The figure turned, cutting a soldier that was behind him in half, and disappeared, dodging a rocket aimed at him. The man appeared and looked at the one that shot the rocket, who was at the top of the cliff reloading another rocket. The figure split his sword in two and threw them towards the soldier's rocket, causing it to explode, killing the soldier. The man then felt a stinging pain as he looked at his arm to see a bullet hole and blood coming out of it. The man looked at the one that shot him, who was reloading. The man took out a black flask that was glowing red and threw it towards him, causing a large explosion of flames, causing the Imperial to scream as his body turned to ash. The man looked at the flames coldly. He tilted his head to the side, making a bullet's miss. Turning around, the man saw more soldiers coming down from a fleet, but what caught his eye was that some of those soldiers were falling down stood taller than the others as they were holding axes with eyes glowing red. So, these are the Magitech soldiers I've been hearing about, he said as he charged at them while the MTs did the same. Dodging one of them, the man cut one of the MT's head off, but instead of it dying, the MT continued to attack even with its head severed. The man split his sword again as he took on two MTs at the same time. The man blocked a strike from one of them, giving him a chance to severe arm from the soulless soldier with his other sword. The man warped, dodging another strike from MT, making that said MT destroying the severed armed mount. The MT stood back as it looked around for the man, but its search was cut short when a blade stabbed it from behind. The MT turned its head to look behind it just in time for the man to sever its head with his other sword. After cutting off the MT's head off, the man threw the machine's body that was still impaled with his sword with so much force at the still functioning headless MT, making them explode. After destroying the MTs, the man turned his attention to the other Imperial soldiers who were looking at him in fear. The man disappeared in silver particles, making the Imperials nervous as they looked around. Where is he? One of them said as he couldn't stop shaking his body in fear. Get a grip, there 5 of us and 1 of him, we can take him, the second Imperial said, looking around for the man. Yay, right, there were 50 of us, and now look, I'm telling you man, we're goners, the first soldier said hysterically as he had his back against the rocks. I said to get a. The second Imperial looked at the first but took a step back in fear along with the other 3, making the first look at them. What? He asked, but he didn't get an answer as the 4 stood back. He's above me, isn't he? The first soldier said as he looked up, only for him to meet face first with the blade as the man impaled the Imperial, making the blade hold the Imperial corpse in place like a scarecrow in a cornfield. The Imperials screamed as they fired at the man, causing a small smoke from where he stood. After they emptied their clips, the Imperials looked at the smoke that was dissipating. Once the smoke cleared, the only thing that was there was the corpse of their comrade that was covered in bulletly reloaded their weapons, but they didn't get the chance as the man appeared in front of them as he thrust his sword to one of them, impaling him to the wall, killing him. The man punched the closest Imperial and took his sidearm from his holster and shot him in the head. Quickly he turned and delivered a roundhouse at the other Imperial to the head as that said Imperial head snapped to the side, dislocating it in a gruesome way. The man turned to the last man who was crawling backwards in fear. The man walked towards the last Imperial while picking up an axe. Please mercy, the soldier said, but his pleas were ignored when the man continued to walk towards him. The Imperial continued to crawl backwards until his back felt the rocky wall. The Imperial looked behind him, then back at the man. Looking around, the soldier saw a rifle at his right. Quickly picking it up, he aimed his gun at the man. Stay back, he warned at the man who continued to walk towards him. The Imperial screamed as he fired. Click. The Imperial widened his eyes in horror as the rifle was out of ammo, looking from the rifle then at the man who ready to swing the axe at him. No. No. The Imperial screamed. Slash. The man let go of the axe as he made his way to pick up his sword that was still impaled to the dead soldier. After picking up his sword, the man walked towards down the hill, leaving behind him dead corpses of Imperials and MTs behind him. Once the man reached the end of the hill, his eyes widened in horror as he fell to his knees to see the crown city in smoke as a massive number of Imperial fleets flew towards the once peaceful city that now lay in ruin. The man looked at the city in shock as he quickly took out his phone and dialed a number and put it in his ear. The phone rang until someone picked up. Naruto? A deep voice answered on the phone as the figure revealed to be Naruto answered. Core. Please tell me it isn't true, he said desperately as the man named Core took a deep breath. Whatever you heard or saw in the news or papers said, they're true. I'm sorry, Naruto. Core said in sadness as Naruto's eyes widened as tears fall from his eyes. Biting his lip, Naruto continued. What of Crow or Nyx? He asked, but to his horror he received no answer from the immortal marshal. Dropping his phone to the floor, the young glaive couldn't hold it anymore as he screamed at the heavens for the loss of his father, his mentor and his lover, with tears falling down from his eyes. Behind him, Noctis and the others arrived just in time to see the oldest Luce's grieve. Noctis looked at his older brother as his own tears fall from his eyes. By seeing his brother grieve, it could only mean that everything they heard in the headline was true. Ignis and the others looked at the two Luces in pity as they turned their gaze at their city in the distance as their home they were born in and raised was taken from them. In a single night, the promise of peace was broken, along with the crown city with it. What will the 5 heroes do now that their home was taken by the enemy along with their king dead? The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.